Hello and good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on your brunch time, your early morning here on Sunday. I am Jen from Wine Antics, and this is a new show. This is an opportunity for us to show you a little bit about what happens beyond the bottle. And today we're actually featuring some great producers from Loudoun County, Virginia. We have Mark Osborne from Adroit Theory Brewing Company. We have Doug Fabbioli from Fabbioli Cellars. We have Peter Alf and Mark Creighton from Defiance Cidery and Distillery. And of course, we have Kelsey Cornell from Visit Loudoun, and we're featured here so graciously by her on the Visit Loudoun page. I have a very special co-host that I've co-hosted for many months now, these live shows, who is Stub from CorkEnvy, and I'd love for him to introduce himself.
Hi, Stub from CorkEnvy.com. Thanks for joining us today on Beyond the Bottle. We're excited to be here, and we're going to start off the show by talking with Kelsey Cornell from Visit Loudoun, where Loudoun County has more than 40 wineries and is known as DC's wine country, but it also features a growing craft beer scene as well as a distilling scene there. So let's bring Kelsey on to talk a little bit about Loudoun County. Welcome to the show, Kelsey, and thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
Can we start by asking you, what does Visit Loudoun mean to the audience? Maybe just tell us a little bit about Loudoun County if we were to be visitors to the wonderful place that is Loudoun.
Yeah, so Visit Loudoun is the tourism organization for Loudoun County. So our entire goal of the organization is to just show off how awesome Loudoun is, and that definitely encompasses our beverage industry. Like you said, there are 40 wineries, 20 breweries, cideries, distilleries, everything, and we're really proud of that product. So you'll definitely have a lot of amazing drinks to have if you come to visit. But beyond that, we're a huge resource for travel information. So we provide tourists and guests guidance and recommendations on dining or where to stay, what to do, whether it's visiting a historic site or going water rafting, riding horses, as well as great events and everything like that there is to do in Loudoun.
Wow, that sounds really amazing, and we're so fortunate to have you and host us on your page, because it is so great. There's tons of people that love Loudoun, and Stub and I are both local to Virginia, so we know and we visited the area, not just for the show. So this month, October, was a big month for Loudoun and wine in Virginia overall. It was Virginia Wine Month. What kind of events did you guys do as Visit Loudoun to celebrate this occasion?
Yeah, October is huge for Virginia Wine Month. It's the most beautiful time to come visit with all the colors changing and the harvest going on and everything. So our biggest event during October was Epicureans Virginia, which is a food and wine festival featuring not just Loudoun, but Virginia products. We also supported the Loudoun Wine Awards, which recognizes the best in Loudoun wines. They submit their wines for the event, and wine professionals judge it. It's similar to like a governor's cup, but it's all about raising the level of Loudoun wine and just promoting how great it is.
Now, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the great craft beer, craft distilling, craft cider industry that Loudoun has as well. Can you talk a little bit to that and how all of these beverages come together and really emphasize Loudoun County?
Yeah, the beverage industry in Loudoun County right now is extremely successful. Wineries and vineyards have been dominating Loudoun for the past 10 years, but in the past 3 years, it's had a huge increase in breweries, distilleries, and cideries. I think the number of breweries has doubled in the past 3 years, which is just ridiculously amazing. So it's a great product, and it's really unique, and we love having it in Loudoun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for coming on. We're going to catch back up with you at the end of the show. But I wanted to say, as we move into the next section, which we're going to start with Adroit Theory Brewing Company, thank you everybody who's here on Facebook. Thank you everybody that's come over from Twitter or whatnot. If you think people are interested in the show, and as we go through and share these other producers, please share this out, throw up some comments, and throw up some love. We'll answer some questions on air, and we love to get the engagement. We love to get you involved in this live show, because that's what this really is all about, live and engaging and with you. So, Stub, I think we're ready to move into the brewing part.
I believe so. As Kelsey said, the craft beer game in Loudoun County has exploded over the last couple of years. We're going to be joined in just half a minute here by Mark Osborne of Adroit Theory Brewing. But first, we're going to take a little bit of a quick look at his brewery from our visit there before we get into our discussion.
We do love big, boozy beers here at Adroit, and this is no exception.
All right, so we're now bringing on and welcoming to the show Mark Osborne, owner of Adroit Theory Brewing Company. We are going to start, Mark, with probably a question you get asked quite a bit. Number one, do you love your job? But number two, how did you actually get into craft brewing as a vocation?
Sure. I mean, it came from a fan perspective, really. I mean, I love craft beer. I love visiting breweries and going to festivals. I was that type of person, and I saw the age 40 on the horizon, and I decided that it was time to do something new in my life and my career, and figured I'd focus on something that I was passionate about, from a consumer perspective.
And passion, as you mentioned, is so important in the industry. I think as we're going forward and we're talking about passion, I think we should start with the name. Did passion come through to the name? Because it's really unique. And I would love if you would share with us the insight behind that, and as well as your manifesto that you have hanging quite largely at the brewery.
Sure. So for those that don't know, adroit basically means that you're skilled with your hands. So if you think about a craftsman being skilled at his profession, that's the definition of adroit. But it also means clever. Mm-hmm. So if you think about making beer, which is a relatively basic process with simple ingredients, turning it into something as magical as beer, I think is a really great description of adroit. And theory, of course, is we make concept beers primarily versus standard to style brews. So you put the two together and kind of summarizes what we do. But in regards to our manifesto, yes, we have a manifesto, and when you come to visit us in person, or even if you see some of our packaging, the message I think is pretty clear. It's that we don't follow the status quo. We try to push the envelope both in terms of beer styles as well as taste profiles, but also, from a company, in terms of, our passion for brewing industry and for being in Loudoun in particular, but also that, we're not doing what everybody else is doing, whether that's, here in Virginia or, on the Mid-Atlantic. We really feel like we have something different to tell, and we've built the entire company, based on that philosophy.
Wow. That's awesome, Mark. Thanks for sharing that. When Jen and I visited the brewery a couple weeks ago, you hosted us so kindly. We got to look in on a little bit of a boil for a batch of Tenebris, and took a little bit of a shot of that. So we're going to show that if we can very briefly, and then maybe have you talk about some of the brewing process post what we were able to witness then.
Sure.
We're in the middle
Tenebris
of brewing a beer called Tenebris, which is an American barley wine. We are in the boiling phase, whereby you're adding, when the timer goes off, various things. In this case, this is hops. This is the second hop addition. We'll have a third and a fourth hop addition at 20 minutes to the end and at the very end. And also we'll be adding sugar. This is the 10-minute addition. Sugar increases the alcohol content of the beer. Basically what brewers do is try to make yeast happy. You boil down everything that we do to, same thing with winemakers, it's the exact same process.
Cool. So we saw the start of that boil there, Mark. Can you tell us a little bit more about the brewing process and maybe expand on, you said you don't make typical beers that people think of when you decide to make something, you just kind of make what you want. Can you talk to us a little bit about that maybe?
Sure. So we don't have a flagship beer or a line of beers that we make on an ongoing perpetual basis, which is definitely out of the ordinary. Most breweries, have a core portfolio. We've been in business almost 3 years, and we've made over 500 distinct beers in that period. So it's always about experimentation and making, new and interesting flavor profiles. The beer that you saw in the video is Tenebris. It's a beer we've made once before, and we're readdressing it. You saw us brewing a pilot batch before we brew a bigger batch, which we'll be doing over the winter. But that beer, as well as a lot of the beers that we make, do tend to be big and brash, boozy beers that are usually higher ABV and usually very complex palate profile. So Tenebris is no exception. And once that beer finishes fermenting, we'll put the regular version on draft straight away. So look for that here in mid-November. Mm-hmm. And then when we do the production batch, you can rest assured we'll put a high percentage of that beer into used spirit barrels or used wine barrels, and we'll break out different variants, several months later in the year.
Thank you so much for that. One of the things when we visited, I really loved hearing about the uniqueness of your brewing line. I also found it was super interesting that you didn't stick to the seasonal, flow of how beers go. What is that process that you guys decide what exactly is right for the timing and your audience and your customers?
Well, honestly, we don't think that much about what the customer might want to drink at a given day or a given time, which perhaps we should. But we have 25 beers on draft, for instance, today at our tasting room. We have 0 pale ales. We have 1 IPA, but it's a black IPA. So again, we're not thinking about what does the average person want to drink. We try to make interesting beers with ingredients that are in season, and a lot of our decisions are made by what barrels we can get when we can get them, and we try to make a brewing schedule around that as the focal point versus pumpkins in the fall and light delicate beers in the spring. We serve big boozy beers year round.
Yeah, of course. And we would be remiss at this point if we didn't mention you released 3 new beers this week. Is that correct?
Yep. So a pretty typical week for us. Again, this is all small batch. We're a very small brewery, so it gives us the flexibility to have a high volume of different beers. But on average, we release 3 brand new beers every week. Again, we have 25 beers on draft at our tasting room, so it allows us to have a pretty diverse portfolio of beers at any given time. But if you come tomorrow, and then you come back a month from now, half or more of the menu will have turned over in that time period.
Yeah. And let's go back to what I kind of mentioned with passion. It's very obvious that you're passionate about it. Whether or not you're tuned into exactly what the customer wants, you put a lot of heart into what you're doing. So sometimes you're giving them what they may not know they really like. So I love that about it. Passion is also found in all types of beverages in Loudoun County. Can you talk a little bit to why you picked Loudoun County and what the county brings to you as a part of the craft brew industry?
Sure. For those that aren't familiar with Loudoun County, it is absolutely a gorgeous and beautiful place to live and to visit. I live here. We opened the brewery because it's 5 minutes from my house, which I guess is supposedly selfish. But the local government, particularly the town of Purcellville, where we're located, is very business friendly. So we didn't run into a lot of the challenges that other breweries do or have to deal with, dealing with their local and state governments. So we love it. I also love the fact that we already had a well-established wine industry. So we already have wine tourists that come and visit, and it's just a natural extension, particularly for the husbands in the group, to go and visit a brewery or two while they're out touring the wineries. And of course, cideries and distilleries are beginning to flourish as well. So just a no-brainer.
Yeah, I love visiting. I love coming out and seeing what new types of all types of the beverage industry is popping up in Loudoun every year. So Mark, thank you so much for joining us. We loved having you. We can't wait to come back out and visit. And if anybody out in the audience would like to visit Adroit Theory Brewing Company, take a look at their website. It's www.adroit-theory.com and go visit. I'm sure Mark would be more than welcome to pour you a pint.
Indeed, I'm sure he would. He poured us a couple while we were there. We didn't consume all of them, but he poured us. Yeah, thanks for joining us, Mark. We've discussed some beer today. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to some wine, and we're going to take a quick look at our visit out to Fabbioli Cellars before we introduce Doug Fabbioli, the owner. Here we go. Bring on Doug Fabbioli, owner and winemaker at Fabbioli Cellars in Leesburg. Doug, thank you for joining us this morning. Once again, I'm getting the easy questions today because I know you answer this all of the time. Tell us a little bit about how you found yourself in the wine business, if you don't mind, sir.
Sure. Well, I started in upstate New York. I was working a small vineyard while I was going to Syracuse University. And I liked the outdoors. I enjoyed the production in the vineyard, and I said, I think I can make a living at this. So my girlfriend, who's my wife now, said, okay. And here we are 28 years later, she's still saying okay. So we went to California. We spent 10 years out there. I worked at Buena Vista Winery in Sonoma. I learned a lot of process. I did a lot of production, took classes out there as well. And then moved to Loudoun County in 1997, and really, at the time we had 4 wineries under production, and now we're up to 40. And I was lucky enough to help a lot of those folks get started and move along in the process of getting their own businesses going. So it's been a fun ride.
And that's a great segue into our next question. As we're talking about Loudoun County, holistically, what attracted you as a winemaker to come to Loudoun County? Was it that you could, start with the grassroots and help people grow and you could all grow together? Or was it just sheer love of the landscape?
Well, sometimes things happen and you don't really know why. And then they kind of evolve and they start to show themselves. So I came to Loudoun because it was close to my in-laws up in Rockville, Maryland, and Loudoun was just burgeoning. I realized being on the ground level of a startup industry here was going to be a good position for me. And then as I kept going, I found a bigger role for me of helping other wineries get started, of really being a big player in this to help, as we say, all boats lift in a rising tide. So our collaboration has been really strong in leading that, so that we could get established in a way where we were able to learn things along the way better than others and get some good establishment over the last 20 years.
Cool, Doug. So kind of sticking with, your uniqueness and doing some different things, which you sort of mentioned. What I find to be maybe your most unique wine is your pear port. And I think it's the reserve where you grow a pear in the bottle of the wine. Can you tell us a little story about how you got to decide to make that specific wine?
Well, that's one, again, where, sometimes things come at you and you got to learn how to dance with it. And we had a couple of Asian pear trees on the bottle, or on the farm here, and we started making a wine out of that. I saw some other people making these port-style whites, and I went ahead and established this wine. And then my brother-in-law gave me a bottle of pear brandy that had the pear inside of it. And kind of the way we do is I'm like, I can do that. I can do that. So we did. So we started growing the pears on the tree, or we hang the bottle on the tree in spring. We train that pear inside of it, and then it'll hang out there all season long. And then at the end, we harvest it off and we put our pear port inside. So kind of a unique, almost a novelty product, but it's a fun little thing that's given us some good recognition over the years. Cool.
Perfect. And I want to take an opportunity to really thank everybody in Facebook Live that's joined us. I love seeing the comments. Debbie and Chris, thank you so much for joining us. These are great wine and live streamers that I know and love out there. I'm glad you're liking the show and really appreciate Rob from Enlightened Audio Visual to what they're bringing out the beverage industry in Loudoun, Virginia. So I wanted to stick on the pear discussion. It's really interesting, really unique, and I think it brings something of great value to Fabbioli when you have so many great beverages out in Loudoun County. It brings something unique. But there's also something else that's unique that you're making, the Solara process. And could you tell us how or why you're using that process and what uniqueness that brings to your wine?
Sure. Well, so the rough idea of a Solara is it's an aging blending process that has been used in sherries and ports for generations back in Europe. And at the bottom level of your Solara is the barrels, and you take your finished wine out of the bottom, but you only pump half, and then you take the wine from above and you bring that down into the half empty barrels. So that way you're kind of blending what was newer with what's older, and that process keeps working its way up the tower, basically, as you see, in a stack of barrels of 4. So they work their way down to a point where the fresh wine is up top. The older wine is down below, but there's a little bit of that old wine. In our case, it goes back to 2009 when we started the Solara system. Each year it's going to be a little less, but it adds a consistency to it. It gives it that aging process. There's always some barrel influence in the breathing of the wood, and it's just kind of an old school thing that we love to do innovative stuff. We love to embrace the historic stuff as well, and finding how we can bring those two together. And I think that pear wine is something that nobody talks about doing something like that in America, but there are some beautiful pear wines and pears and different things that have been done in Europe in different niche areas for generations. It's kind of cool.
Cool. Well, another thing, Doug, pulling into your onto your property there is the building that houses your tasting room, and I guess underneath that, the barrel room we just saw in the video next to you there. It's quite striking. It's basically a round building. Can you tell us a little bit about the design for that? Was that a winemaking thing, or was that just a specific, we think this design is cool and want to go with that?
Well, my wife initially envisioned a yurt, and I love that roundness of a yurt, but I told her, I said, honey, it's not big enough. We can't heat it. We can't cool it. We could do it, but it's going to be challenging. And then she talked to some people, and she found this building, and it's called the Deltec. It's actually a home design that they built down in Asheville, North Carolina. So it's a kit that came out here in 3 tractor trailers. And, you know, we're a bootstrap operation. I don't have a lot of money to pay other people to do things. So we kind of use our team and as much knowledge and you know, brute strength as we can. I like the idea of Adroit because we do a lot of things with our hands, and we built this thing ourselves. So I brought in a field consultant for 2 weeks to assemble this, and then everything else inside was us. So all of the plumbing, electrical, drywall, all of the finishings were us in order to get this working. And it's been a great project, and it fits with the land, and it fits us. And it's just a nice, now that we've moved from our cellar of the house to where we have some space to share, the customers get a really, you know, top-notch experience coming out to our small establishment.
You know, that's an amazing transition from concept of a yurt all the way to winemaker of the year at the 2nd annual Loudoun Wine Awards. What does this honor mean to you? You know, what is the process? What does that mean?
Well, you know, we joke around sometimes that, you know, some have dubbed me the godfather of Loudoun County wine. And I say, yeah, godfather without the violence. You know, we try to help each other out and really set a tone. And it's based on quality. You know, if somebody calls me up, I'm going to talk to them, whether they're, you know, if they're a small home winemaker, if they're, you know, some people think about competition. We don't have that. We collaborate. We want to make good quality. We want people to come out and know that they're going to get good experience, they're going to get good products, and that stems right into the brewers and Defiance with the ciders and the distillery. You know, we all are on this page together. We want to do it in a way where it's sustainable for generations. We're respecting the land that we're on, and I guess the honor of Winemaker of the Year is just an extension of that whole theme that I've learned from others and really try to be the ambassador of, the promoter of, that, you know, we're here to stay, and we're here with great quality and things to offer people that want to enjoy what we do.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty solid way and a solid message to convey about the craft. Even the wine in Loudoun County, I would say, is pretty craft in nature. So craft beer, wine, cider, and spirits, so that it's a cooperative environment. So I want to thank you so much for joining us today, Doug. I appreciate your time. And for the audience out there in Facebook, thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for sharing and finding out more information about Fabbioli in the comments. But for anybody else that would like more information, please go visit them in the Leesburg Tasting Room or at fabbioliwines.com.
Indeed. Yes. Thanks for joining us, Doug, so much. And thanks for hosting us at the winery a couple weeks ago.
My pleasure, Stub.
All right. So we've discussed now Loudoun beer and Loudoun wines. We are now going to move on to Loudoun cider and spirits. And I think the name gives it away, but Mount Defiance Cidery and Distillery produces both cider and spirits. And we're once again going to take a quick look at Jenn and I's visit to Mount Defiance a couple weeks ago.
I wish everybody could see the behind the scenes here. It's a dance party with that music to the video. So I'm going to start off because I had the great fortune of spending some time with Mark Creighton from Mount Defiance, and he is the cider master over at Mount Defiance. So Mark, good morning. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine, Jen. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, you're totally welcome. You know, I had a great opportunity to go out and barrel taste, which we saw some clips of that, your General's Reserve cider. So let's take a little bit of a look of that, and then maybe you can talk to me about it a little. Or we could just start talking about it now, and then we'll entry the videos. So it's.
I'm sorry.
Tell us what we tasted in the barrel, or you.
Okay, what you tasted in the barrel is a normal, our mainstay cider, which is called farmhouse style. It is a classic artisanal cider that has been aged in used bourbon barrels. A distillery by law is required to age their bourbon for 2 years in an oak barrel, and they can only use those barrels once. And then we only use the barrels once, not because there's a law about it, but the cider will then take on the taste and the flavors of the bourbon. And then after that, once it's aged, well, it's time to use the barrels as planters then, because it sucked the flavor out of it. And what you tasted was bourbon aged cider.
Well, I think we have the video now. Let's get a little peek so the audience can see what the tasting was like, and then we'll go back to talking about it a little bit more.
This is a bourbon barrel aged cider that we call the General's Reserve. It was named after a general I worked for in Iraq named General Allen. Last May, we poured this in to an old bourbon barrel, fresh bourbon barrel, and it's been in there for 4 months now, 5 months, and it has a nose. If you'll take a little whiff of it, you should be able to detect a bourbon nose. Okay, so it has a little bit of barrel in it. It hasn't been filtered, so it's still cloudy, and it has about definitely a strong bourbon taste, and also malolactic acid, which is a natural process that occurs with cider resting in a barrel. So if it's carbonated and then chilled to about 38 degrees, it actually tastes kind of nice. We can only use the barrel once, not by law, but because it bleaches, it gets all the taste of the bourbon out of it, and so doesn't do any good afterwards. So we have some bourbon aging in our back as well, but it will be another 6 months or more before our distiller thinks it's ready, and these are who counts.
Well, thank you very much for this.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate that.
All right, thank you.
I love watching that back because it was such a fun little opportunity. There's not a ton of people that get to do barrel samples. So I love that you invited us in and gave us a chance to taste cider directly from the barrel. Now that the General's Reserve isn't quite ready yet. When will it be ready?
Oh, next month.
Next month. Right. And that kind of goes in line with all of the ever-changing ciders you have on tap at any given time. What makes you decide what ciders come in and out at any given time?
Well, we're always on the lookout for neat things to use to co-ferment and ferment with, like a fruit to ferment with with apple cider. Last month, we found our friends at Cana Winery had some Petit Verdot grapes. We bought a fair amount of those, and we co-fermented that, and we're now making a cider rosé, which is an apple cider wine blend, heavier on the cider than the wine. And initial taste tests are great. So essentially, we try to go down the road of where can we find fresh ingredients that are local that we can make and differentiate our cider as an artisanal cider.
You kind of stole my thunder there. That was going to be my next question, is like, how do you get along with your local industry? Because that's one great thing about Loudoun County, is there's so many great agricultural products, great wineries out there. Are you excited to do more things like that in the future? And do you see collaboration as the way to go forward?
Yes, we're not that competitive because all of us have our own niche, basically. And Fabbioli winery that you had on earlier, he stopped in, gave us great advice. We chatted with him. I hope I was of some use to him as well. But that's the wonderful thing about Loudoun right now, is that it's small enough that most of us are friends. We're not, and there's plenty of business to go around. There's a good demand for artisanal wine and cider and spirits. So there's no cutthroat competitive stuff out here. We tend to love collaborations. Like, I'm very happy that we're going to make a vermouth with Cana Winery, and I'll be happy to do something with Fabbioli down the road if there's something that's mutually interesting to both of us. We're always up for stuff like that.
So from here, we're going to segue into Peter Alf, who is your distiller at Mount Defiance. But I wanted to ask you a quick question. How did you guys come up with this combination of a cidery and a distillery together?
Well, Peter has the distilling skills, and I was more, I had some experience in cider. The age-old problem with the distillery is, if you're going to make whiskey or bourbon, it's several years before when you start and when you can actually sell a product. Cider only takes a few months, even the best cider, maximum of 4 to 5 months. And so with the combination of having a cidery and a distillery, we'd have some cash flow that would allow us to take a longer period of time on this. So far, that's worked out for us.
Perfect. So one really quick transition as well that I was going to make is to address some of the comments that we got in Facebook. I noticed from Debbie, who says, what do you do with the barrels afterwards? Which I think you kind of hinted at and have some good suggestions for, Mark.
Well, we do sell them, or essentially a lot of home brewers will buy them. They will like the cider taste to it, or they'll buy from Peter his old rum barrels because they like the taste of rum, and we also have brandy barrels. So if that's a flavor that they want to enhance their products with, they're welcome to buy them. The barrels are so hard to find. There was a national shortage, that you basically sell them for close to what you paid for them. And if you're doing anything that adds taste to it, more power to you.
Perfect. I think this is a great time, since we've talked about all types of barrels now, to turn it over to Stub and Peter Alf, the distiller.
Indeed. Mark, thank you for joining us as Peter gets in his chair. You saw Jen get to do a barrel tasting of cider when we visited. I was a little more adventurous and got to do a tasting of their absinthe. And we're going to take a quick look at that to try to explain the proper absinthe tasting process.
All right, so we're here at Mount Defiance, and we are going to be tasting your...
this is our absinthe.
Yes, great.
Mount Defiance absinthe. We serve it the traditional French style with our absinthe fountain here. This is how you would be served if you came to our spot in Middleburg here. So this is a ½ ounce that I pour into the glass right here with the absinthe spoon. And we'll dilute it with the chilled water and the sugar cube. So chilled water, not everybody has a fountain at home, of course.
Sure.
But chilled water is most necessary. It brings out all the oils of the absinthe one at a time and releases all those oils. Really nice.
So you've got the sugar cube, which equals about a teaspoon or so of sugar on average?
Yeah, about that. That sounds about right. We actually make our own sugar cubes here.
Wow.
Yeah, and you want to dilute it quite a bit.
Okay.
Some people think maybe dripping a couple drops of water and whatnot, but yeah, quite a bit. We can go to like a 1-to-3, 1-to-4 ratio.
Okay.
That's what we're gonna shoot for.
And the drip's obviously important to get the sugar to dissolve into the glass.
The sugar may dissolve first. It kind of helps with that initial anise and fennel taste that you get.
Okay.
That's what I find with it. And so yeah, it's after dinner. It's a good digestive. So that's a 1-to-3 ratio with the water.
Wow.
So it's got
That sounds amazing.
the drink as you're drinking it, the flavor really changes. Your taste buds get used to certain flavors, and then you get the lemon balm, which is one of the ingredients as well.
This is amazing.
Great.
I can't wait to sit with this at home by myself at some point later.
All right, joining us, as we said, is Peter Alf, distiller at Mount Defiance Cidery and Distillery. Peter, let me start by asking, I'm pretty certain that Mount Defiance is the only distillery in Virginia making absinthe. Is that true?
Yes, that's absolutely true. In fact, there's probably 30 or 40 distilleries in the United States that are making absinthe, and we're the only one right now.
And can I ask you, what led you to that decision to make absinthe in your distillery?
Well, I kind of think of Mount Defiance as the land of forgotten spirits. A lot of the things that we make, the common thread that goes through them, is that there are things that were popular way back when, and for one reason or another, they sort of fell out of favor. And absinthe is a perfect example of this. Back in the late 1800s, it was hugely popular both in France, and Britain, Europe, and in America. But then for mostly spacious reasons, it was banned from production in many, many countries. So after 80 years of not being made in the United States, just about 10 years ago, production began again. And we figured that this was a niche that we could fill with the mystery and the lore that goes along with absinthe. We thought it would be something that would be really fun to try to bring back and reintroduce to the American public.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as at the end of that video, I really, really enjoyed your absinthe and have been doing my best to perfect a Sazerac for the last couple of years. So I'm looking forward to using your absinthe for that in the next couple of weeks. So you make your absinthe, but you also make some other unique liquors and distilled spirits there. How do you go about choosing? Because you do make some things that perhaps others would think would be an unusual combination for a distillery.
Right. Well, obviously, since we're a cidery as well, right, 10 feet away from me, we have a bunch of hard cider. So it's natural for me to take that hard cider and distill it into apple brandy. That's another product that in revolutionary times, when people came over from England, they drank hard cider. And when they started distilling spirits, that was one of the first things that they did. So again, out of popularity into popularity. Rum is another case. Back in revolutionary days, rum was the most popular spirit in the United States. And also rum, like Mark said, it doesn't have to stay in the barrel for 2 years. It's something that we can make, release a white rum that could go on the market right away, while our other rums age in small barrels for a little while. The other thing I'd like to mention is our cassis liqueur. Cassis liqueur is made from black currants. And black currants were, again, banned from cultivation in the United States back in 1906, I believe. And that's because of the concerns that there were regarding a fungus that white pines could catch that shared the same insect vector that the black currant bushes had. So it's only been, I think, 13 years since Greg Quinn in New York State got the legislation enacted to allow cultivation of black currants. And we actually go to him and his farm in Hudson Valley around harvest time every year, and we pick up hundreds of pounds of black currants, right back down to the distillery and start making our cassis. In fact, we just started bottling it about 2 weeks ago for the 2016 harvest.
Wow, that's really cool. I love that you go directly to the farm to get your currants for that spirit. But you also, as we were just seeing here in the video next to you, you have your own garden for growing some of the botanicals for some of your spirits. What made you decide to grow your own herbs and botanicals?
I think the real key to making a fantastic absinthe, and we really wanted to have one of the best absinthes in the United States, is the ingredients. So we grow, absinthe is made from both leafy herbs and some seeds. Now the seeds are anise seed and fennel seed. We actually import those from France in the case of fennel, from Provence. It's a special type of fennel called fennel doux. And we get our green anise seed from Andalusia, Spain. It's hard to replicate that in the United States. But the leafy herbs, Virginia is not a bad place to grow them. And so we get by growing them ourselves, we get them as fresh as be, and then they really go into making a fantastic absinthe.
Wow. Yes, I will once again vouch for the absinthe is fantastic. And in that tasting video you saw me, I was not drinking as quickly as it looked towards the end. So you seem all about, Peter, maybe as a final question here, you seem all about kind of combining the old and the new. That's a little obvious in your tasting room with, for lack of a better word, maybe kind of a steampunk vibe in there with some of the fixtures and things. Can you talk a bit about that, maybe aesthetically, and how that works in your distilling?
Sure. Well, it's interesting. Mark and I, who we just spoke with, have been friends for a long time, and we got to know each other because I was actually a cabinet maker before I began distilling. So when Mark bought this old garage for the distillery and the cidery, he hired me to do the tasting room. And he loves steampunk. He introduced me to the whole idea. So we sort of together developed the idea for the tasting room, and it kind of went with the whole, like you said, the vibe we're trying to create for the overall business.
Well, that is awesome, really awesome. And I want to thank Peter, you and Mark both for joining us today. Please get a chance, anyone viewing, go visit Mount Defiance Cidery and Distillery in Middleburg. It is an amazing place, friendly hospitality, great. And if you want to find out more information about them, visit mountmtdefiance.com. So I think now we're going to bring Kelsey back on to help us wrap up and tell us a little bit more about Loudoun County and how its beverage industry affects other aspects of tourism.
Yeah, and Kelsey, you're so fortunate to be part of Visit Loudoun as the marketing coordinator and to have so many great craft beverage companies and facilities right there locally. So how does all this great beverage companies, these beverage facilities, help Loudoun County increase their tourism?
Well, I think someone said it best in the comments that they're huge foodies, and learning about this industry in the background to be able to mix and match and pair stuff is really important. So food is obviously a great additional product to wine, beer, spirits, and ciders, and we do have a great booming dining industry in Loudoun. We have a lot of great farm to tables, a lot of awesome chefs, new restaurants coming on all the time that can utilize these products. Over the weekend at Epicureans, we had Ford's Fish Shack make an oyster soup with an Old Ox brew, which was awesome. So that collaborative experience that you can have in Loudoun with all this great local product is just huge.
Yeah, the local product, the local food and beverage industry working together is great. But being that, Kelsey, you're from Visit Loudoun, we would be a little remiss if we didn't mention the recreational opportunities that Loudoun has to offer outside of the actual eating and drinking. Can you discuss that a little bit for us?
Yeah, sure. So Loudoun is also known as Hunt Country. Middleburg, Virginia is in Loudoun, and it's one of the oldest horse countries in the state. So we have a lot of horse equestrian history. As well as outdoor attractions. There's Harper's Ferry Adventure Center and Empower. You can zip line, go whitewater rafting, as well as a lot of historic sites. Oatlands is beautiful. Morven is beautiful. There's a lot of historic sites that you can visit and tour around, which is a lot of fun. There's also a huge biking industry out here as well, with the W&O&D trail running through Loudoun. It's absolutely beautiful to go biking. Plus, there are a lot of brewery stops on the way if you wanted to reward yourself after a nice bike ride.
That is indeed true. I love going out to Loudoun County. It is gorgeous. It is particularly gorgeous this time of year with the changing leaves, and they're actually changing maybe a little bit later this year than normal, if I recall. Mm-hmm. But Kelsey, I want to thank you for coming on and talking to us a little about Loudoun County and helping us get in touch with Mark and Doug and Mark and Peter and helping us put all this together. And if you want to learn more about Loudoun County, especially the beverages, but everything else as well, go to visitloudoun.com. And I'm sure Kelsey will be happy to help you figure out what you need to do if you visit Loudoun County.
Thank you guys for having us.
Very welcome.
Yes, and I would like to also thank all of our guests. I'd like to, Mark, and if there's another Mark in there, you're awesome too, Peter and Doug, and thank you for your hospitality. Coming out there is such a great experience for Stub and I. I also want to thank the production team with Enlightened Audio Visual. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Jen. You guys are amazing. Don't forget, if you love this content, you like what we're doing here, please follow me on Wine Antics, and that's on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and of course follow Stub as CorkEnvy on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and of course we both have the .coms, wineantics.com and corkenvy.com. We hope to see you next Thursday, or this upcoming Thursday, I should say, for Thirsty Thursday with Wine Antics Live. So that the Wine Antics Facebook page has great weekly wine shows. This week we're featuring Amanda Barnes from Around the World in 80 Harvest. Looking forward to seeing her things. And if you like what this is as a wine region, as a distilleries guild, please reach out to either Stub or I, and we'd love to feature your industry, your association, your region, and go forward with that. Otherwise, thank you, everybody, and I look forward to the next Beyond the Bottle.